This mini lecture talks about long-term athlete development, pillar number 5. This pillar relates to just the health and the overall well-being and welfare of the child, and that this should always be the number one central priority of long-term athlete development programs. So what is in the best interest of the health and the wellness of the child is number one. So here's a few things that we know. All forms of physical activity for youth, whether it's recreational, play, general physical activity, strength and conditioning, sport, these are all things that are part of this basic and universal human right that we have, this condition where we want to be well, free from disease, and not be sick. And physical activity, all forms of it, can be ways that we can support and promote health, which is a fantastic thing if we consider our roles, our responsibilities as teachers, as movement educators, as coaches, and as trainers. We get to be a part of this. Well-being is a positive and sustainable, that's an important word, sustainable state that helps an individual or a group or a team to thrive and flourish. And so it takes it beyond just this universal human right that we have for free of disease into well-being. That's something that's not just momentarily, not just a fleeting feeling of feeling okay or feeling confident. This is something that within a team setting or within a coach and athlete relationship, or teacher-student relationship in a physical setting, that we want the student or the athlete over time to feel that in general it's positive, it's a state that isn't going to just change depending on the whim of the coach, and they really feel that they can develop, that they can grow, and that they can get better and meet their potential in that setting. So what does it actually mean for sport? This is important. We can't just assume that because a kid is active or because a kid is playing a sport that they're going to be healthy. And so the International Olympic Committee does talk about youth, and they recommend youth should engage in sport. They want kids to do sport. However, the sport can't just be games for the sake of game's sake or specific types of games that are pretty cutthroat. They want games for youth and sport for youth to be something that's fun, that's enjoyable, that word sustain comes back. And again, we want them to be able to want to do this sport over time. And then this concept of success is going to come back throughout this pillar. So the IOC in best practice says that we want kids to feel like they can attain success. And success has different definitions depending on who you talk to, depending on the context and the situation. And it's important for us as professionals to make sure that our athletes, our students, our movers know that success looks really different. There's a lot of different ways that we can express what success actually is. Sometimes it's with wins. Sometimes it's with great stats. Sometimes it's with learning a new movement, and when things finally start to click after some challenging practice and you're starting to get it, that can be success. It's having a mental win, that can be success. So it's making sure that they understand that success is broad. It can be in different areas and at different levels of play. So even in adulthood, success is attainable. We are focusing on this health and well-being aspect of pillar number 5. There's a couple areas. We have psychosocial health and physical health. And so we know that the main reasons why youth choose to play a sport, and the same exact reason, it's the same one why they choose to drop out, is enjoyment. Having a pleasurable, a fun experience. So when they're enjoying something, this is why they want to play. This is why they want to do the sport, why they want to train. When that fun and enjoyment is gone, this is the main reason why youth will drop out of sport. So as practitioners, here's what we can do. We can create a training environment that's supportive. That doesn't mean a training environment that coddles kids or that only gives them wins or only says good job, good job, good job all the time. A supportive training environment is a setting where kids understand the purpose of that training session. They understand the roles of the coaches and the other adults that are working with them. It's an environment where they feel that there's a common value of the team wanting to succeed. And that includes the fact that the coaches want the team to succeed beyond just winning, that they want the kids and the athletes who are part of this group to grow as human beings. we want to make sure that activities in this setting are developmentally appropriate. So if we're in a strength and conditioning setting for youth, and the youth, it's their first day deadlifting, for example, it's a great movement to teach, but we're using equipment that is not appropriate for their body size, for their type, for their training history, for their technical proficiency. And the student might be struggling, or you might be cueing them over and over again, and they're not just quite getting it because they're using a full barbell, a typical 45-pound barbell, and the size of the equipment is not developmentally appropriate, and so they're not able to have success. That's not fun. That's not an enjoyable learning environment. We also want to make sure that when we give them feedback, so whether it's positive or corrective feedback, that it's clear. What we are giving feedback on is directly related to the expectation. And then the feedback is said in a manner and delivered in a manner where it's growth oriented. So that even the tone of the feedback, in addition to the words themselves or the feedback itself, makes sure that even though it might be hard to hear, if the student or the athlete is doing something incorrectly or not to a performance standard, but if they know that that feedback is to help them grow and to get better at it, that's what we want for feedback. We do want encouragement, and we do want the adults, especially, and teammates, to believe in each other and to believe in the athletes. And so making sure that our movers know that the encouragement and support that coaches and other practitioners give is that it's a very true, heartfelt belief in them. And we also want practitioners to make sure, this is a key one right now we're really having trouble with youth, is that failure is in the process of being successful. It is not the opposite. So we need to make sure, again, they know failure is in the process. It's on that path, on that trajectory to success. It is not the opposite direction. It is on the way. And so making sure that failure is something that is talked about, that failure is something that is talked about in a growth mindset type of way, where there's always a lesson to be learned and application and next steps and action that come out of failure. And it's not an end of the road type of situation. We want to make sure that the culture of well-being and of challenge and youth success is there. So this is another major aspect of our psychosocial support. So growth mindset is valued. We want to see self-determination be developed. We want to see perceived competence understood. So the potential, the actual performance that kids can do, we want them to understand that it's a real thing. We want the student or the athlete to make sure that they're confident and they can apply their confidence, and we want them to apply their resilience. So here's what these things actually look like in some examples. Growth mindset. It's a value and a belief, and we can talk about growth mindset with a few different populations. So with coaches, it's a value and belief that the reason why they're out there coaching, the reason why their team is there, it's to grow. Even though, yes, winning is a part of it and having a scoreboard success or statistical success is important, the purpose why anyone is out there is to enjoy the experience, even though not every moment might be enjoyable, but the overall experience, and then is to grow somewhat out of it. And then we also want to make sure that coaches, they exhibit a growth mindset when they're open to new and varied options in training, when they're open to be developed and to get feedback from other coaches, when they're willing to take a step back and let their ego down sometimes if they need to regroup and retool the entire season or the entire offense or the game plan. In youth, a growth mindset means that they are putting forth a very purposeful effort in their practice. They're not just doing things to go through the motions. They know that their coach is giving them movements that are intentional, and so they execute them with purpose. They bring an attitude that's authentically positive. And it doesn't mean that they need to be over the top positive or fake positive, but in general, that their attitude towards the playing experience comes from this growth mindset, comes from this aspect that they're going to do something to make themselves better that day. It also means that this growth mindset means that the value of trust and the fact that the professionals, whether it's coaches and trainers, other people that are around them in that sport or movement setting, they want to help them achieve success. And so it's putting trust in these professionals. And then success comes back. It's also understanding that success is not just only winning. It also can be setting personal records. It can be learning a new skill or new technique. It could be managing stress or anxiety in a better way than the last time. All of these things are examples of success. And it's making sure that our movers can define success in multiple different ways and that they can actually recognize when they have success. A lot of times kids forget to recognize some of the small victories and they only look for the big ones. And then with parents, we want to also make sure that we communicate and educate parents so that parents know that each experience the coaches or trainers are creating and developing, that it's meant to support the growth of the movers. And it's not meant to make the kids' lives harder, or it's not to express a personal vendetta against the kids. Is that every single thing this coach does is meant to chip away at this process of tapping into their kids' potential, and that the team goals and values come first, and that the parents also need to know that the goals and values of a qualified coach also need to come before their own values as parents and what they believe about how the sport should be run, because that coach's role is coach, the parent's role is parent in that setting. So a little bit more in depth into self-determination. It's this deep center drive to participate. A lot of people talk about motivation, but this is a motivation that comes from this deeper source. So it originates in our innate value system, and we know that fun and enjoyment is part of this innate value. Challenge, wanting to be challenged, just liking it, having an interest, and then making sure that the process creates just as much, if not more, satisfaction than the actual product. And so self-determination is really being able to view the process as enjoyable and challenging and interesting as what the product might be. We want to make sure kids know what perceived competence is. And so perceived competence is strongly associated with having ongoing participation over time. It's them really understanding what they can do. It's called metacognition. And so it's them being able to look realistically at their own performance and self-assess. I can do this, but I'm not so great at this, or I have to fix this technique. It's them understanding what they can do, being proud of what they can do, and also looking forward into what types of potential that they can have. At a stage in life where social comparison is major. Kids are looking around at everybody else and they say, oh, this person is doing this better than me. Sometimes they have a distorted view of that social comparison and they see inaccurately on either side of the spectrum how they compare to others. In other settings, the comparison is a little bit more objective. So in sports or games and activities that are measured by time or distance, it's easy to see who wins, who loses, who throws farther, who lifts more, who jumps farther, for example. And so it's important for us as coaches to make sure we set clear expectations and we explain what a good performance looks like, or an ideal performance. And that especially relates to our points of performance and the technique explanations that we give, because if we don't give these clear explanations, it makes it harder for our students to really be accurate with their perceived competence. We also get kids who think they're much better than what they are when they have no way to prove it because they can't execute the technique the way they need to. And so clear expectations helps with this. We see that a mover that has good psychosocial health and well-being in sport, they can apply their confidence. And so it's an authentic confidence that is not built by someone else. It is built by themselves, by the mover, their belief in themselves. That confidence can be supported by others. And so confidence comes as a result of being resilient. So we'll see that in a second, but it's the state of remaining stable or returning to stability even though there's adversity. Having positive experiences, even though there might not always be success in terms of product-based success, and then making sure there's plenty of opportunities to practice. The more you practice, usually more confident you get. And so we know that more applied confidence, that's authentic, it relates to reduced anxiety, better performance as well. And then we see resiliency. I mentioned it previously. It's the ability to remain stable or recover quickly. And we want to make sure our movers can identify what adversity can look like, how it's expressed differently or received differently, strategies to manage themselves and to return to a stable state, and some strategies to develop mental, physical, and emotional toughness. And some of those strategies, it's okay to challenge yourself to be mentally tough as long as it's safe, and making sure we provide outlets that are productive to express frustration or sadness or fear or anger. And then finally, we want to make sure we reinforce physical well-being. So we want kids to engage in training that's appropriate, well-rounded, looks at the long-term view versus short-term gains in developing athleticism.